Okay, this is Lyndon.
And Vanessa.
Thank you for joining me, Vanessa. Welcome to Remix Your Marriage.
We're doing it.
We are doing it.
We're doing it.
And you know what it means to remix something?
What?
It means to try and make it better than it was the first time.
Sometimes it doesn't always. I was a little concerned about the title because I don't always love remixes.
Okay,
I love Bobby Brown's Every Little Step, that album.
Or Rock With You?
Yeah, that's the
remix.
The remix, you shouldn't even be, if you're listening to the original,
you're wasting your time.
Yeah, you're wasting your time.
Yes.
So that remix is good.
All right, so we're a bunch of 80s, we are two.
There's a lot of us in our, that's what Remix Your Marriage is all about.
All two of us are 80s kids, grew up in the 80s, grew up in the 90s.
So, we like to sound younger and say 90s, but it really was 80s.
Well, I was 17 in 1990.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You were almost an adult.
I was young.
And I married an old man.
So who in the world are we and what gives us the right
to do this?
To have a podcast about marriage and making marriage better?
Mm-hmm. Well, I for one wanted to do this because I don't feel like I see us everywhere, you know? I feel like our story, everyone's story is unique, but we don't come from the best backgrounds.
Right.
And the fact that we have been married for 20.
So I think it's going to be easier if you say since 1996.
Since 1996.
Since 1996, yes.
And then we met in 1989, December 2nd.
December 2nd, 1989, yes.
Yes. And we didn't meet December 2nd. We
decided that we were going to be something.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just start with me.
Yeah, can you tell me?
We're going to start from the beginning.
Tell me a little bit about who you are.
You're interviewing me?
I sure am.
My parents were my dad is from Guadalajara, Mexico, and my mom is from Guatemala. They both, their story can be another story, so I won't get into that. When we were 3 years, from the time I was born till I was 3, I lived in the Valley of California and Southern California. And then my parents started to make a lot of money. Well, you know this, right? So I always say my parents did the absolute best they could with what they knew. And I'm very grateful for everything that they gave me. The thing is we moved from the Valley when I was little. For those of you who don't know, part of Southern California, Van Nuys is an area we call the Valley, where there's more, would you say there's more diversity?
Especially back then.
Yes. There was a lot more diversity. There's a lot more Latin people, that's for sure.
Yes.
And then we moved to a suburb called Santa Clarita, where I was one of 5 or 6 Hispanics.
What year was that you guys moved, do you think?
Well, I was born in 1974.
So 76, 77-ish?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And both my parents were alcoholics. My dad was a heavy alcoholic. He basically was always drunk, but there was a drunk where he could manage throughout the day, and I didn't know any different. And then there was a drunk where he was passed out and verbally abusive to my mom. Never, ever abusive to me or my brother. He always wanted to give us the world. But of course, growing up, seeing my dad so awful to my mom. And also, my mom was too embarrassed to tell people what was going on in the house. So she would come to me. And because in our home, it's very hard to brush things under the rug. We are loud. We are passionate. We scream. We fight. We cry. And she was doing that all. She was venting to me. She started at 7 years old, started telling me my dad was having affairs, and just all the things that my dad would do. So, of course, I started to really, really, I felt that I hated my dad. And I grew up with that, even though he, I didn't understand. Nobody really understood alcoholism then. Do you remember in the 80s when there was when you'd stay home from school and it was always that weird TV commercials when The Price is Right is on?
Back when you couldn't pause or fast forward.
Yes, and you'd have to watch all those. Okay, do you remember the commercials where it'd be a really dramatic scene where
this is your brain on drugs?
Fighting. No, a couple was fighting.
Okay.
And they're need help, call 1-800. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was just me. I remember.
But you probably paid more attention to those commercials than I did.
Happening, at my house.
I paid more attention to the after-school kids that didn't have a place to go. Anyway, we'll get to that. Go ahead.
Anyways, so I wrote that number down, And I remember writing in Spanish, por favor llame, like I wrote, please call in Spanish. My dad didn't speak any English. And I gave it to him. I remember walking into his room. By the way, my parents had lived in separate rooms. They never slept in the same bed. But growing up with that too, I mean, that can't be healthy. I'm thinking of all these things now.
Yeah.
And then
But that was your normal.
my normal, and
Yeah.
I slept in bed with my mom until I was like 12 years old. I never
Yeah.
slept in my bed was covered with stuffed animals. I never slept because I was my mom's best friend. I was her comforter. I was like everything.
And you have a brother too,
And my brother, living his own world.
doing his own thing. Because
Yes.
he's how much older is he than you?
He's 8 years older.
8 years older. So
Yeah.
when you guys moved there, you were 3 or 4 years old. So he was,
He was, yeah, and he was going through his
11.
own thing with his, because he's actually my half brother, which is so weird. I do not call my brother my half brother
Yeah, same.
because my dad raised him. My dad looked at him as his own.
And I have to tell you, to be honest, because you are more dark skinned.
Yes.
Your brother can almost pass for Caucasian. So I think,
Yes. So can my mom.
and so can your mom. So I think, especially with her blonde hair sometimes. So I
Yeah.
think when you moved to Santa Clarita, it was more obvious that you were a minority. And your brother could have kind of just passed and blended with everyone
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
So it was a little harder for
I
you
mean,
just in that
my
part.
nickname was, are people going to get offended? It's, if you're
I
Latin,
can
you
say
get
it.
it. Okay, you see.
Negrita.
Yeah, that was my nickname.
Yes.
And then my brother's nickname was Gordo.
Yes. Which are loving names
They're loving.
in your
It's
culture.
Latin, you get it, but it's kind of hard to.
But like for, Black people,
Yeah.
our
No, it's not okay.
our nickname isn't black and fat. Yeah, so
So bad.
yeah, so but it translates different.
I don't want to get into that,
Okay.
but yeah, it was wrong in all kinds of ways. And yeah, just growing up in that household, I really am truly blessed. My grandmother's prayers. I don't know. My dad never laid a finger on me. Never. He spoiled me rotten. My parents, which makes my situation a little bit unusual. My parents ended up starting their own cleaning business. They were janitors, and they cleaned Man's Chinese theaters. They did that at one time, and then Man's Chinese became Man 10 theaters in Santa Clarita. They cleaned that from 4 a.m. till noon.
And that was their business.
That was their business. From noon to 3, they would make sure me and my brother were picked up from school and take me to dance, do whatever they needed to do, and then they would sleep too. That was their nap time. Nobody was ever allowed to call the house. It was terrifying. My parents were not strict at all, but when it came to sleep, obviously,
Yeah.
they needed it because they were back at working offices, local offices, cleaning from 4:30 p.m. till 9 p.m. 9 p.m. at night, and that was their life. That was what they did, and I watched them, and I believe that's how come I got a good work ethic. Thankfully, our kids have great work ethic. But growing up in that household was hard. It was tough. It was fighting. It was screaming every single day. And I had overheard a conversation that my dad was having on the phone with one of his mistresses, and I remember just thinking he was so happy. And then I liked hearing him laugh. Does that sound so sad?
How did you know that was a mistress?
I could tell by the way he was being loving and kind because he didn't talk to my mom that way.
That's
Yeah.
tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was the house I was brought up in. And then at 13, probably like 2 years prior to this moment, this very significant moment in my life, my dad used to love the Jeffersons. Wow, we are really aging ourselves.
No.
But my dad loved it.
If you don't know what the Jeffersons, look them up. George Jefferson, the Jeffersons came out in the 70s.
Yeah.
Incredible sitcom.
And it just came to me. I'm thinking I know why he loved them. Because they moved on up. They worked.
Oh, and he was a dry cleaner.
Yeah.
Your parents were cleaners.
As well.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
Okay.
He loved the way he walked. He loved the way he talked.
he
He
has
didn't
swag.
really understand a lot of what he said, but he just would laugh. So I remember it was a very significant moment. We were watching TV, and we were watching the Jeffersons, and he was laughing. A lot of times he would laugh. He would like throw his head back, and then this time he was throwing his head back, but then he was like jerking and making this weird. And my mom started screaming. She's like, Vanessa, I don't even think there was 911 then. I think we called the operator. I don't even know. And she's like, Vanessa, he's having a heart attack. Something's wrong. And I must have got this from some 80s sitcom, but I actually remember trying to give him CPR. And he was like jerking on the floor. And then we had the ambulance come. The ambulance came and took him. I don't remember if I just, I get like, when you think of a memory and you just get flashes?
Yeah.
That was what I get of this moment. I just remember my mom picking him up from the hospital, getting his clothes all ready, and he was fine. And then later on, she told me that he faked it. I don't know how true that was, but fast
So
forward,
so he was fine.
he was fine.
Okay, so
We don't know what was wrong.
I don't remember this story
Yeah.
after being with you for
Mhm.
30 something years.
Yeah, so that's why I have to tell that story, because then fast forward 2 years later,
When
we're
you're 14 now?
13,
13 now.
13,
Okay.
and I'm really bad with what age I am. So then I'm 13, and um, I hear an ambulance. I hear people in I'm in my bedroom. Sorry, I'm in my bedroom. I'm sleeping. And I hear a lot of commotion. I hear ambulance and I hear my brother. So I come out and I can see my dad. He's on a gurney and I see ambulance everywhere. And my mom, she doesn't look that worried.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, this has happened 2 years before.
Right.
So, in all honesty, we're not completely panicked, but we're, of course, still worried.
Right.
And so she just told me, oh, we don't know, something happened with your dad. He passed out, but also my dad passed out a lot.
Because of the
Yeah,
drinking.
because of the drinking.
Right.
But we're going to go see him in the hospital later. My mom does the same thing, gets his clothes, folds his clothes, I think she even got him some lunch. That's one beautiful thing about my mom, is that no matter how bad he treated her and how he was to her, she always fed him. She always took care of him. She washed his clothes. She always took care of him. It's just so beautiful. It's just so, I learned a lot of grace and love from my mom. Anyways, and we go to the hospital. I remember being in the emergency room just waiting. We're just going to pick my dad up. And they said, can we talk to you guys? Can we talk to you? They looked at my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mom comes out. She's like, we're going to have to stay here a little bit longer. Your dad is in a coma. And so he was in a coma for 3 days. And then by the second day, they told us that there was no brain activity. And then the third day, he had passed away. And so the hard part, and why I say this, there's reasons that we're telling you our backstory, because then it'll explain our relationship.
Yes.
Is because, in all honesty, I'm gonna get emotional.
That's all right.
I I was I was so happy for my mom, because she didn't have to live with him yelling at her anymore. She didn't have to live in pain. And then there was that part of me that was like, are you are evil. You are evil to not be sad that you're dead. How are you not sad? And I look back, and I was just living with them, so fighting all the time, and it was so violent. And to think that I could live a life of like quietness and peace.
Yeah.
I was kind of looking forward to that. And so that my mom knew that I felt very guilty about being angry with him, being mad. So the way my mom handled things was, she didn't talk to me. She would have the school talk to me,
Mm-hmm.
or she had me see a therapist, and
Yeah.
which is all, that's what I'm saying. She did the best she could with what she knew.
Yeah.
So she sent me to a therapist. And I think I don't even remember barely talking to a therapist. So, anyways, I'm 13. My dad is gone. My mom has realized I'm an alcoholic. I need to get help. I'm going to be in AA meetings and work, so I'll hardly be home, because she needed to get herself better.
Can I rewind something that's very important? And I think this is important to the story that you're telling, is your dad deciding to be sober a few days before he passed, and what he did in that time.
That was extremely important.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I was just like kind of going through the motions
Yeah.
without thinking about it. Yes, 3 days before my dad died, we always had, back in the 80s again, there were people that would come to your door, not just Jehovah's Witness. People would come, but my mom actually befriended these group of women. They were Christian women,
Mm-hmm.
and she did meet them by them coming to the door, but we ended up being friends with them. And they would come to the door all the time and talk to my mom and read her the Bible. And my mom always made sure I went to church. Like, even though she couldn't because she was working all the time, my neighbors would take me to the church. That's a whole other church in the 80s in Santa Cruz, a little brown girl like me. Really great experience. But anyways, and she always was close to God. That was just, that's what she needed. And my dad would just always walk in the house, go straight into the hallway into his room, and just ignore them. But for some reason, this one time, my dad decides to walk into the living room when they're talking, and he just sits down on the couch, which is so rare.
Right.
And both of the women said, do you know who Jesus is? He's like, yeah.
Have you
Great.
heard the good
Like,
news?
have you, I know how they did in the 80s. Well, however they did it, God is going to speak through, who knows who he's going to speak through and how he's going to do it, but he's always going to find a way to speak to your heart and
Yeah.
through people to your heart. And he spoke to my dad's heart that day. And my dad ended up, praying with these women, giving his life to God. And for 3 days,
3 days.
did not drink at all, was in a good mood, like I barely remember this. This is all from my mom telling me this.
Yeah.
I do remember a little bit. I remember the night before he had the stroke, that she made him this huge dinner and he ate all of it because she used to get mad because he used to pass out, and he ate all of it. And I remember them laughing. I remember him being like in a really good mood.
Right.
And so that was 3 days. And I think what made me feel better as a kid too is like, I think that God knew, because my mom told me that, and I always had that peace knowing that right before he left, he had peace, he had joy, and
Yeah.
I think that in my child head, I was like, well, maybe God knew he could only hold this for 3 days.
Yeah.
That 3 days. He gave us those 3 days.
Yeah.
So after he passed, my mom decided I needed to go to private school. She wasn't home a lot, and I found a way to get attention. I thought it was everything to have boys think I was pretty, to have boys look at me, and boys never did. Because I was just so different looking. I never, but I had a really great confidence. Like, I think from the time I was like, could walk until unfortunately junior high, when those boys beat me down.
With words.
Yeah, with words.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounded bad.
Yeah, I did.
With words. I really thought I was beautiful. It was like I thought it was the most beautiful thing, and I walk around like nothing and dress like Prince and Janet Jackson and all kinds of things.
Right.
But then I went to a school where boys just bullied me about my nose, about my hair, my everything you can imagine. Really getting attention. I think I just started to kind of blossom and get attention, and I did whatever you could. All I wanted to do was be popular, and I wanted guys to notice me. I didn't care about school. I didn't care about anything. That is all I cared about: wearing the right lip gloss, wearing the right clothes, wearing all of that. That's why I went to After Hours. So After Hours is a dance club that was in the 80s and early 90s, maybe?
Yeah. It was 6 years, I think 87 to 93.
Six Flags Magic Mountain, California.
Which is also in Santa Cruz.
And when I started going to Magic Mountain with my friends, because there were boys that went to Magic Mountain that were from the Valley, they were from other states, and I was getting attention because it was like getting out of this little bubble of mostly, no offense to blonde and white and, beautiful girls, but for me, that was at the time, that was all boys would look at,
Yeah.
look at a little dark girl like me. But I went to After Hours, and
Because you had people that were from the Valley.
Yeah.
From,
Yeah.
all nationalities, that not in just the Santa Cruz bubble.
Yeah.
So you looked like who they grew up with.
Yeah, I guess so. And I guess some people thought they didn't know if I was Indian or if I was Persian or if I was Latin too.
Right.
Which I would get made fun of.
And I didn't care what you were. Just like, dang. Yeah.
Anyways, so apparently you saw me there. I did not know you yet.
Yeah.
And we would go every weekend in the summer. Or would we go every day? I feel like we went every day, but I think we went every weekend in the summer. And we were literally, you guys, the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, we danced. Like,
Yes.
if we were not dancing in like these are teen clubs, by the way, it's not a real club.
Yeah, there's no alcohol served.
No. This was like a teen club, but we were in living rooms practicing how to dance, watching Bobby Brown videos, Janet Jackson videos, watching all those steps, making sure that we would take it. Like, we had the best time.
Yeah.
I was at After Hours, and I used to go with a couple of my best friends, and I saw another group of friends that I hadn't seen in a long time who everyone thought was super cool. I thought they were so cool at the time. I'm laughing if they decide to listen to this.
They will.
And I don't know if this is going to be offensive, so we could decide to take it out or not, but this is my truth. This was the 80s and 90s.
Break it down. Keep it real.
They were like, we're into black guys now. we like black guys, and they're so hot, they're so fine. This is like the age of the wearing the African
Yeah.
leather symbol on
Too
your.
strong, too good for apartheid, those kind of shirts.
Yes, it was.
I'm rocking that stuff. I had no idea what it meant. And
Fresh Prince was at its height. Yo MTV Raps.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. All that stuff was just exploding.
it was exploding. So black men were like, that was what. Not that black men weren't always beautiful.
But here's the irony. This is the irony in your story.
I'm so nervous talking.
It's okay.
It's my truth. It's the truth.
So you grew up in Santa Clarita where you weren't seen because of the way you looked, but you became a product of your environment because you were only at that time attracted to Caucasian boys because that's all you saw all day, every day. And the same with your friends. So when you saw them at Magic Mountain, they're like, oh, we're in the black guys now. That was kind of like, oh, because there wasn't a whole lot of black guys around at that time. So it became a trend.
I only thought white boys and white girls were the epitome of beauty. That
Yeah.
was what beautiful was. I
Yeah.
wanted to have blonde hair, blue eyes. I wanted my name to be Jennifer because this was the environment.
That's funny that you.
I know. My friends were now dating black guys, and I said, "Oh, okay, cool." And it opened my eyes to a whole new world of music, of culture, and I was so fascinated by it, and it was really like overnight. It was just what I was attracted to, so I had started dating black guys, and I remember first seeing you at Canyon.
Yeah.
See, we don't talk about this a lot.
All right.
If our kids are listening now, they may want to throw up a little, or they may just want to stop listening.
Yeah, just fast forward.
But I think stuff is good, you know.
Yeah.
It's weird how I can't remember what I ate for breakfast, but I remember this moment like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just gotten my heart broken for the 20th time, by the way. I always was getting my heart broken. I was very dramatic.
That's shocking.
And I remember I was sitting with my friend's sister, Erin. I don't even know if she remembers this, but anyways, Megan, Erin.
Oh, her.
I was sitting with Erin. I think she was sitting with me. I can't remember that part, but I see you, and I already knew who you were, but it was like my eyes were open to who you were.
Right on.
And you had just finished. I knew you were on the volleyball. By the way, you were the complete opposite of me. You were so good.
I tried.
You were so kind, and you did sports, and you went to class.
Yeah.
I ditched a lot. We'll go into that later. And you had little blue.
I was wearing my.
We called them dolphin shorts.
They were Daisy Dukes.
They were like, what's that material? Like a mesh?
So
Like, and they had like a V, right? Like, because you could like, I remember seeing your thighs, and
the little
his
slit on the side.
legs, holy cow, they were shriveled and they were shiny because you were
You said
good.
shriveled.
I mean,
Whole
chiseled.
chisel. Okay, I'll take that.
They were chiseled and shiny because you were good. You never had ashy legs.
Oh, always baby oil. Where I grew up, yeah, I lathered in that baby oil.
And you were running up the stairs just in your own zone. You were an athlete. And I remember my friend going, because if you're from the 90s and 80s, one of the things that we would say to each other is like, who you scamming on? Who you like? Because you always like somebody. And then I remember someone asking me, who are you scamming on now? I'm like, oh, I'm scamming on Lyndon. They're like, Lyndon, the nice one.
Yeah.
We're called the nice one.
The nice one.
You were the kind one. And I just had to find a way for somebody to, because I couldn't tell you myself. Like, I needed to know that you would like me before I could tell you. Remember?
Yeah.
Find out if he likes me, but don't tell him I asked you. Just tell him. But then if he says he likes me, then you could say, well, I think she possibly, it was like, you had to make sure.
It's just all drama.
Yeah, it's all drama. And then you had a girlfriend, but that's another story. So that's part of my story. There's so much more to it. We meant to tell both of our stories in one episode, but I don't think that's possible because we're just getting on but we really want everyone to understand our background.
Yeah, it's good to know. It's good to know where we came from, our backgrounds, because that explains a lot about who we became as a married couple and the struggles and us crashing into each other because we brought all of our luggage from our background into our marriage without ever getting anything cleaned out. So that's why it's important to kind of to know where we're from and
Yeah.
who we are. And yeah, on the next episode, it'll be my story, where I'm from, and I was the original Fresh Prince who got kicked out of his house and had to go live with my
He's
uncle.
telling the truth.
This was long before Will Smith, and that story is yeah, it's a little crazy.
I feel like this podcast, I know we have, you know, Remix Your Marriage is what we are, and that's what we're, I guess, doing, but really we are two broken kids that
Yeah.
came together and found each other. And man, by some miracle, we are not only have we been married and we've been together this long, we actually are so happily married. And don't get me wrong, you still get on my nerves. And I know I get on yours.
There it is.
You're so good because you don't actually say it. But I don't think I could have even dreamed that we would be this happy. So I just believe we have such a powerful story to share, and hopefully we can help people.
Yeah, and I think it is so crazy that the person who has hurt me the most in my life has brought me the most love and joy and friendship that I could not even imagine. And
That's weird to take that in.
yeah.
Because I'm not going to say the same, but yes, it's the same.
Yeah, it should be. Because it should be the same, because I think in a marriage that you're two different people, so you are going to hurt each other, you know, but it's not so much about just hurting each other. It's learning how to get past that hurt and learning how to talk through it instead of letting it fester. And one of the biggest things that I did was I didn't want to talk to you about stuff. I let it fester and fester until it ends up blowing up. And these are things that we need to talk through and work through and help other people get through, because I think I'll close with this, that one thing that I learned is holding it in is so much worse than letting a little bit out and arguing about it, and then letting a little bit out and arguing about it. It's so much better to do that than just to keep holding it in. And then when that explosion happens, it is so much worse than if I personally would have just talked to you little by little. Yeah.
But going into my background, and I came from a family that fought and argued and yelled, and whenever something was on our chest, we would just say it, we would scream and all the things. And then
We did the opposite.
Yeah, you did the opposite.
Yeah.
So that coming together, a couple coming together from those two households is going to be, it's going to be tough. But
Yeah.
anyways, we'll go into
How to remix that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so next episode will be my story and my background and my history, and then we'll talk about how we came together. I think episode 5 and 6 are going to be two very big episodes, because we're going to tell you exactly in detail what we went through, why we were on our way to a divorce, and how we got through all that.
But we want to give a background first before we give the
just
big
jump
explosion.
into it.
Yeah. And I think it's important for everyone to see where we came from and also where we are now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're going through it right now, don't worry. Don't worry.
If you're going through it, hold on tight.
There's so many tools.
There's so many tools now. How much more is there now than when we were going through it?
Well, first of all, we didn't have us. That would have been very helpful.
I know. I sometimes feel like there's this, I'm just going to say this really quick. There's this, and we'll tell, spoiler alert, we ended up getting pregnant when I was 19, 18 years old. And so, yeah, spoiler, we'll talk more about that later. But when I was a young mom and had no money and I was so broke, I used to go to these craft stores because I kept thinking okay, I'm a mom now, so I have to do crafts. And I would see these moms in there that would have like their Louis Vuitton bags and walk around. I could just tell they had money, and just the fact that they had, I don't know what it was about a coffee cup in their hand, but I always just thought they were so cool.
I remember the coffee cup.
Yeah, I always wanted that.
Yeah.
And I do that now. And they knew exactly what crafts to get, and the crafts were so expensive. And I I would feel so inadequate as a mom. I'm like, why don't I know this stuff? Why don't I? Because I never saw anybody like me. I never saw
Yeah.
a young mom doing well or wanting to be a good parent or being, wanting to be present for your children. And that's sometimes how I felt about when we were going through what we were going through. I was seeing all these couples when now I know these couples were going through something,
Yeah.
they just weren't sharing.
Exactly.
But I never saw anyone like me. And that's our passion behind this.
So, and that's the big problem. Like you saw all these other couples and you didn't think they were going to anything because no one was sharing. And that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So it's important to share your struggles so you can help other people get through theirs. So thank you guys so much for taking a chance. For those who listen to this whole episode and don't know us, we appreciate you, and they're just going to get better, and we're going to drop as much great, exciting, knowledgeable information that we can.
Stick with us.
And we love questions. So if you have any questions for us, you can send your question to remixyourmarriage@gmail.com. We love questions. We will get to every single one of them. Of course, until we blow up and we have millions and millions, and then we'll have to ignore you. No, I'm kidding.
We will have a team.
Yes, we will grow this team. But remixyourmarriage@gmail.com. Any questions that you have, don't worry if they're too controversial. We will talk about it.
Yes, we will talk about it.
We've been through it.
This is where the music is going to come in.
We'll kind of slowly.
Do you want to do a little beatbox?
No, because it gets on your nerves.
No, it doesn't. The smacking of the microphone.
That's beatbox.